So we talked about you give trust and then keeping it is earned.
Correct. Exactly. And so I don't feel that I give anybody enough trust that they're going to sink my ship because at least where we're at now, the size of the company, the role, everything's kind of divided among multiple people. So it's not like before where I had just one person. That's a little bit harder, and that's just a growing pain when you find yourself in that position, but just know you won't stay there forever. You're not just going to have one person necessarily forever. So from that standpoint, we're big enough now with diversified roles that even if one person really messes up, it's not fun. And yes, there is damage, and we can suffer from it, but it's not going to sink the ship necessarily. I don't feel like, and just because of the way we have the roles designed, and thus far, I could be maybe naive in that regard, but that's kind of where we're at with that. And then again, I just keep a watchful eye on uh, giving them a job description that's in writing. So we have clarity. We do a 90-day review when we first hire people. We do quarterly meetings. So we're having touch points with them along the way. That helps keep communication open. We do monthly staff meetings and we're watching numbers. So there's all these metrics that we're kind of watching, and if we feel like somebody isn't living by our values that we have as a company, that's how we judge our
Yes.
employees. And so if they're not living up to the values of the company, then we address that with them, give them an opportunity. And so from that standpoint, and I can't say that, I mean, is somebody gonna, that we train gonna go off and set up shop across the street from us? I mean, maybe it may happen.
Mhm.
But again, I have to also just trust that I do my due diligence, and ultimately, and I have a lot of faith, and my faith really, it's one of those things where God knows the future and he knows what's going to happen and he knows what people are going to do and not going to do. And I just have to manage my own integrity and manage my own self. And as long as I manage that as best I can and trust him with the rest, I believe he makes a way, he protects, and those kind of things, because I cannot control everything. If anything in my life, I've learned that I can control me barely, and that's really about it at the end of the day. And so from that standpoint, and that's part of doing business. You just realize that that is part of doing business, that you're going to have people leave unhappy with you. You are going to be the bad guy sometimes. You are going to be misunderstood. If you own a business, people are not going to understand you unless they own a business themselves, and you just have to accept that. I don't like it. It's not my favorite thing. But again, I have to accept that, not spend my emotional energy on that, and, spend my emotional energy elsewhere.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the topics that I've sort of been ideating for this live event we have coming up is just this competition conundrum. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately, where the industry's grown so much. And so I like my first, job in aesthetics, I was selling lasers and skincare in Beverly Hills. And I remember those days I would camp for the day. I'd have like 30, I mean, I literally park my car in one lot and see 30 practices in like one building. That's how competitive and saturated already back, what, a decade ago or whatever it was there. But now that's sort of spilling over into the rest of the world and it's becoming a lot more commonplace. So competition is just coming up everywhere. And so, of course, we talk a ton about your brand positioning strategy and we talk about staying ahead of competition. And now you have to think about your own people that you pour into and give all of your proprietary information to, and share everything with and develop and invest in. They could leave and start their own business, and
Yep.
that is a reality.
Yep. It is.
So it almost to me makes, why are we even talking about the competition down the street when this is cultivated in every aspect and every sort of prong that is firing into your business,
Yeah.
And so, to that, I feel like you have to get above it. Like your head has to be somewhere there where you
Yep.
are,
Yeah.
which is I will get up every day and operate with integrity and do my best. And what will be, will be.
Yes. Yeah, you have to. because that's the way, just even a few years ago, I just decided that my competition is me. And I have to remind myself of that every day, sometimes more than once a day, honestly. And for me, social media is not helpful, to be honest with you. It's just like I don't know if it's just the season where I'm at in my life, um, or what, but I might have to go see a therapist and talk about that. I have no idea, but anyway,
I don't think
um,
you're that's gonna be a big group session.
I know, yeah, exactly. And so there's just things, and of course, in talking with one of your other consultants, Krista, we were talking about this the other day, and I used the word trigger, and again, I hate buzzwords; they drive me bananas. Like that's where if you hear me use the word trigger or toxic, I am not on the bandwagon. If I use that word, it is because it's like I'm being very purposeful. But some things on social media just it triggers me. It's like, well, why didn't I do that post? Or somebody does a post and I'm like, that's crap. Like I don't, and I am not gonna get into a piss and match with people on social media. That is just no thanks.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I just have learned I am not on social media much unless I am doing a post, I'm reviewing it, looking at something for the business, and
Yeah,
I'm off.
creating.
And I
Yes.
think it's just where I'm at in my life. Maybe it's just, last year was a tough year for me. And so I just think maybe my emotional reserves are not where they used to be. And I have to understand that. Like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I need to do for myself psychologically to maintain healthy balance. And so if I'm on social media, I'm watching raccoon videos or chihuahua videos or chickens, I'm doing something completely that is unrelated to my business because I need a break. And I want social media to be a break for it and not to be this downward spiral into whatever psychological abyss that I'll find myself in. So I just have to say no to it, in that regard.
Yeah, only a country girl like you would be watching chickens, but, um,
We're going to have chickens, next year as the game plan that we
I'm
will.
jealous of that for sure.
I know.
No, it goes back to me to like, as just sort of tying a theme to some of these conversation, pieces of this journey we're talking about are these identity shifts that I think you sort of phrased as slower, there's seasons of growth, right? So we talked about the money problems, then we talk about the people problems, right? And there's always problem. Like that's why we're
There's
in
always
business,
a problem.
solve problems, right? And so that sort of like brings, I think where, and I know where you have been over the past, couple of years, and I'm jotting this down as I'm writing, because for me, then it's the thought leadership problem.
Yeah.
And I think that is where the frustration comes when you're an original creator and thinker, and there's not much originality there in
Yeah.
that platform. So like when you turn on and you feel the things you talk about, like, and I think it's a good exercise for everybody. Like what does trigger you when you look
Yeah.
through your social media? Everybody does get it, right? So like
Yeah.
what is it that bothers you and
That's
why?
a that's a good suggestion. I'm gonna have to do that. And so because normally I feel it and I'm like, yeah, but maybe I need
Write
to
it down.
acknowledge the feeling and kind of process it a little bit, and it might be
Yes.
more helpful. So thank you. You just coached
You're
me. So thank
welcome.
you for
Little
that.
coaching session here. I think what it does is it brings a level of awareness and just visibility to it. So it doesn't just feel icky. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's why. And so you can name it.
Yes.
And I
And then
think
it'll shrink. You know what I'm saying?
exactly because
It'll diminish it.
you have more control over it. So I think like from my perspective, knowing what you've been working on, and I want to talk about this proprietary methodology and why we're talking about it today and not a year ago as well. But is when you transition from this being a curator of you're of a collector of experiences and information and lessons, and you start learning things in the world, and you're sort of taking collect pieces and turning it into your own thing, and then
Yeah.
you go and you apply it, and you become your own creator in the world.
Yeah.
It can become very frustrating seeing people talk about themselves as a creator, but they're really a copycatter still.
Yeah.
It's
It just
this. Yes.
I can't. It just really like And then of course, I do some of the same things. So I'm not being like on my high horse, looking down my nose at everybody. That's not the heart behind it at all. Because I do some of the things like I'm dancing and pointing in the air like everybody else is. I love doing that stuff. It's fun. And I like the funny, silly side of social media. I don't have my knickers in such a knot that I feel like it's going to disrupt my professionalism or that people are going to think I'm a crappy injector because I dance to a song on social media. I don't think my professionalism is that fragile. But from that standpoint, it's like there is so much. It's just everybody's doing the same thing everybody else is doing. That drove me nuts in high school. It drove me nuts in college. It still drives me nuts to this day. And so it's just something that's I think in everyone's like Me Too, copycat, or you need to post this video. Well, I just saw three people post the same stinking video. I'm not going to do it. Like that's dumb. Unless you're the first person to do it, that's great, good for you. But then everybody else is just kind of, oh, that was popular. Let's do that. And that's why algorithms on social media drive me bananas because to me it's just a popularity contest. The algorithm is like who can beat it and who can get there first, and everybody else is just copying it. It's like I want to be the algorithm. Like I don't want to be following
Oh,
the
yes.
algorithm. It's like what is it? So then right now for me, I literally, even though I'm on social media, I mean, literally, my personal professional page the last year has been I've been the least involved with it I've ever been. I'm not saying that's what people should do, but I had to be just because I had other things I had to deal with. I had other fish to fry to get my Missouri rates. You got to say the fish to fry. I had other things that I had to deal with, so it just wasn't a priority for me. I didn't want to evaporate off of it totally. And so that's where I'm this year. I'm kind of going to have to refigure out what we're going to do, but I haven't, it's not been a priority for me yet. And when it is, everyone will see that I'm going to do something different. I have no idea what it is. When I figure it out, I'll let y'all know.
Well, and that's, that the challenge is that, and we talk social media specifically, it's a needed platform. We have to be there
Absolutely.
to show
Yes.
up.
Yep.
The challenge is doing it in a way that
Yes.
we all feel a bit sort of restrained to this is the way we have to show up. And that how you and I are in a lot in alignment, but women who we work with in particular that are alternative thinkers, it can become very frustrating that to feel like you're being bound by some like random abstract thing when
Yes.
that the work you do is really
Yes.
special,
Who made these rules?
Oh
Who
yeah.
makes the
Yeah.
algorithm? Like what 20-year-old
I know.
out there is like, and so for me, it's just like, why,
Yeah.
like, I just don't understand all that. But
Yeah.
it is necessary and it is a very effective marketing tool and you can do it on the cheap, right? So I'm not down on all social media. It's important, it's vital, it needs to be done right. You can communicate your brand, your message, people can get to know your personality. So those things are all fabulous. And I love that we have that as a resource.
Yes. So this is in just such a great dovetail, and I appreciate that the conversation sort of went here because we're thinking about this next stage of problems or stage of opportunity
The
with
opportunities. I love that.
being it right, like get to know your numbers, learn how to, I mean, essentially this is like our pathway in KLC, right, is like build the business, build the dream team, and then grow yourself as a leader. And so that's sort of where you are, Jenny. So we started talking about, over at least been a year and a half or so, I think, about this whole idea of a proprietary methodology. And you've written a first draft of a book. Like you've got so much in the works, which, there's stuff behind the scenes that we're not going to share publicly too. But this idea of differentiating your message, and you're in competition with yourself. It's not so much about like so and so down the street's gonna take my stuff. It's like, no, actually I have something really important to teach this industry, to help the industry grow.
Yeah.
And that's really where your thought leadership stems from. So we set out on this journey together and started kind of just brainstorming and talking through all of this. And then, another trial happens, right? And we go through this past year. So catch us up kind of there. And then I want to talk about like where we are today and
Yep.
how we're going to bring this methodology to light.
Sure. Yeah, I know. I was so excited last year about like it was one of my number one goals was to really kind of develop this methodology and implement it into my practice and all of that. And I really was excited about it. And it was really fueling my fire. And anyway, but unfortunately, on January the 3rd of last year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mhm.
So 2023 took a big nosedive for me because then not only was it unknown, like what's going to happen to my business, like what's going to happen to me, because then now you all this other demons that you have to kind of battle while you're going through all of that. And so thankfully we caught it very early, and I did not have to do chemo or radiation, which I'm very, very fortunate and blessed that I didn't have to do that. However, came with its own baggage. I just thought I'd be done with it by April and we could just move on with life. Unfortunately, that's not how it played out. And 2023 was a lot like Groundhog Day for me. It's just this recurrent nightmare happening where I wound up almost every other month, I was hospitalized or having surgery. And I had 5 surgeries last year, 6 hospital stays, was septic twice, about died once. It was just really terrible, really awful. Your health and your body takes a beating, your mind takes a beating. And I'm so thankful that my team was where it was. Number one, I'm grateful that the manager who'd been with me for 7 years that went AWOL, I fired her because if she would have been running the show while I was sick with cancer, my ship would have sunk. I would have been the Titanic. I would have been. So I had to have the spine and the balls to look that situation in the eye, acknowledge it for what it was, get past my heartbreak over it, and deal with it, which is what I tell every one of my team members. Like, don't back me in the corner in my business because I will never fail the team. I will never fail the business. I don't care what decision I have to make, how hard it is, who it is. I will make the right decision for the business at the end of the day. Period. Dot. And you have to have that clarity in those moments because sometimes it's murky and it's gray and it's painful and it hurts and things are happening that you don't want to have happen. But I'm thankful I did that because if I hadn't done that at that time with that employee, then with the cancer diagnosis, it would have been a poop show, really. And
Yeah, I was thinking too, like the difficult decision that it's almost toying with it's making you question your motive as like a woman. You know what I mean? And like the empathy and like the care that you have like as a human. And you start to think of yourself like, am I such a machine
yeah,
that like I'm making this decision in the business, but it's actually making somebody feel like that, or it's
yep,
creating that domino effect here. And it's a mind game because you
it
start
is.
questioning yourself like and I feel like that is like like that is the true essence of
Yes.
leadership right there,
Yeah.
of that. Where do you go?
Yeah. And that you don't want to be wrong. Of course, that's the thing. You never want to be wrong. But at the end of the day, the way that I have to look at the situation, and like I said, I'm pretty direct. I make decisions most of the time not emotional. I can't say never, but I really try to be logical. Even though I may be feeling emotion, I'm not trying to make those decisions out of that place. I make it out of a different place. But is yes, I want to be empathetic toward them, and I am caring because I do care about the people that come and work with me. I care about every single one of them. But then I have to look: are they caring about me? Are they caring about the business? Are their actions demonstrating that? And if
Mhm.
they're not, then my empathy with them is very unilateral
Mhm.
because they're not having empathy towards me or the business or the situation. I can't work with that. Now, if I have somebody who is, empathetic and verbalizing things and workable, you can deal with that. If they're not, then it's unilateral, and then you have to make a unilateral decision. And of course, they're not going to like it.
Well, and it just like of course, the hindsight's always 2020, and which is why I love these conversations. And here then you are diagnosed with breast cancer, going through we talked, I mean, 5 minutes of what last year was, but
Yeah,
that was
it was
and
hell on earth.
I
I mean,
personally yeah. That I've learned a lot working alongside you and coaching you through that, like, has been a coaching experience for me as well.
well, I
And
had the cancer just so you could learn
oh
that.
my gosh,
No,
no.
I'm teasing you. No,
Yeah.
but I'm glad because you have to take the bad things in life and turn it into something, because otherwise it's all a waste. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm glad that was able, hopefully I can help you help somebody else down the road that you coach who finds themselves maybe in a similar situation.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And myself, you know, going through it, right? Like, because nobody's immune to adversity. And I
No.
also think that what I was seeing was so much of the people around you and like true colors come out. So when we talk about like team, that's one piece of it. And also every other, aspect of investment you make, and then friends and family and, our coaching team and your vendors and right.
Yeah.
You find out really quickly who's in it for the transaction and who's in it for the relationship.
Yeah.
Because and then
Exactly.
and I think like there's that who are what because you had to really respond, like you had to go, your team had to go to war for you.
Oh
They,
yeah. They did.
and
And I'm
so
so thankful they did. They worked their tails off. I mean, it wasn't all roses and sunshine, you know. We had, for the year when we looked at, and I'm still the number one producer in the business. And, we're working on getting away from that, but it's the reality of where we're at. And so from that standpoint, I was down my personal numbers for 2023 versus 2022, which, technically we would have been up in 2023, but I was down $373,000, just
mhm,
me alone. With what I missed, we had that much income out of the business. But my team really rallied. And at the end of the year, we were up 7% from 2022, with me being down almost $400,000.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, right. So, I mean, I just have to say that's a God thing. It's a team thing. I do really believe that God was watching out for me, and he will that for anybody else. It's not just me, but he will do that for anyone else. And the hard work and the foundation that I laid in the business in
exact
all those years of humble beginnings, where we have a stable patient base. I didn't get my expenses too high. My overhead wasn't too high. We didn't have a ton of debt that we had to pay off. We had money in the bank because I saved money in the bank, which we didn't even have to touch any of the savings. We had it though. If we needed to, we could make payroll without me working. So, it's just I had all of those lifelines along the way. And so it wasn't any one thing that made that possible, but it was all the things working together that I'd put in the work for years and years previous.
Yeah,
All
and I think like when you have those like those little voices in your head, like I feel like I should be paying more attention to this, or I should make that investment, or I should spend some more time. I sometimes we don't know why those like that energy is shifting us in that direction, and so
yeah,
I would just, I think like think of that, like really pay attention to that. Because I mean, that's, you named a few of the things that the foundation you laid, but even the lessons that we know now, like, and
yeah,
even investing in your leadership development, like those things, like the timing has really been as it should have been,
yeah,
so
exactly.
let's go back to, now we're here,
We're here.
and yeah, time has led us, and now we're finally getting your proprietary methodology launched, and you're kind of getting the things in place, for this next stage of your thought leadership. I don't know, coming out, so to speak. I don't
Yes.
know. So talk about, I think just would be great to hear about your proprietary methodology. How did you kind of come up with it? I think we obviously teach this in our programming, and almost all of our programs have a piece of this because it's such an important part of distinguishing yourself in a saturated industry where everybody's injecting the same stuff,
And it's only going to get more saturated as time goes on.
Exactly. Exactly.
It just is what it is.
So let's talk about this. How did you come up with it? What is it? And what are you doing with it?
Well, ultimately, coaching with you guys helped me. I wouldn't probably have done it on my own, to be honest with you. I needed the kick in the pants, like you need to do this. It's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so it's kind of intimidating to think about it. So I was, I thought I don't want to just come up with something kind of wild and like, look at me and I'm so good and this is what we do. And so but this is something that kind of came from just as I started talking to my patients, I just hear myself repeat the same things over and over again, and
Mm,
kind of my philosophy. of why I do what I do and how I treat them. And is my philosophy vastly different than anybody else's? Probably not. But it's just again all of the little things along the way that have gotten me to where I am, and I'm piecing it together. And so I think that's what sets somebody apart that's doing a proprietary methodology is you put it together in this nice little package and you give it a name, and it solidifies it, and like you say, it lends you credibility, and it helps communicate your message much more clearly and succinctly to your patient population, where I just was communicating the message kind of on a one-on-one basis when I was doing consults. Now we can communicate the message to everybody. We can do it on social media, and we can do email marketing to our current
Yeah.
patients, and all of these things. So anyway, and I haven't even presented this to my staff yet. So we're going to do this actually a week from today. We're presenting it to the team, and we're going to do it kind of in a layered fashion. But we have developed kind of a logo within our logo for I have it right here, Glow Tectonics. And anyway, the philosophy basically is I was just thinking about how we age. I love geeking out on all of that anatomy and things. And aging is methodical. It happens a lot earlier than a lot of us think that it does. And there's kind of an order that it happens in, unless there's something genetic or weird health conditions or a trauma or something. So it's an orderly process. And so there's an order that we have to respect in the way that we fix it or correct it or slow it or prevent it, however that is. And so tectonic plates basically are the Earth's crust, and they're constantly moving. And they move like a fingernail grows, right? So they're very slow. It's not something that we see happening. But then when we look at the topography of our landscape, we see mountains and valleys and hills and rivers and crevasses, all of those things. And so that's what happens to our faces. We get mountains and valleys and hills and crevasses that we don't want. And so there's something that is causing those. They're not just happening because, again, it's orderly. And so we age from up to down and out to in and all of that. And so from that standpoint, the methodology lays out the order that we would correct those things in. And it's also based off of Dr. Braz's work from Brazil, where he talks about facial shapes determining areas of strength and areas of opportunity or weakness in how we age. And so we know based on the shape of their face, I can tell a 20-year-old what she's going to need when she's 40.
Wow.
And so, because I can tell where she's going to show aging first. So you can start building a relationship with your patients that, hey, I know how to handle your face now. I know how to handle your face next year. I can handle it in 5 years. I can handle it in 20 years. And so from that standpoint, we just identify their facial structure. We come up with our methodology, the order that we're going to treat them in, and then we develop a written treatment plan. And so what we're going to do is we send them home with their envelope. There's going to be all sorts of, I have information and things in here currently that they'll go home with. And then with their written plan, and we're going to give them payment options where they pay for either 6 months or 12 months of care based on their customized plan. I know you're like, yay. And so they get discounts and perks, for doing that. And then the thing that I liked or that we're doing, which we have not fully implemented this yet. So this is all very theoretical at this point, but we're creating the plans and this, we don't even have anything pretty done yet because it's literally my chicken scratches, but good, better, best. And so we're creating a good, better, best plan for them that's customized. The good is 6 months and the better and best are 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And just from financial reasons, I think some people want the 6 month option. And so from that standpoint, we're wanting to give them that. My thing is like where you create a bundle of services where it's like everybody gets this and this and this. Is that customized? No.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's like, okay, well, we have this plan and everybody gets an IPL and everybody now does everybody need an IPL for the most part, unless your skin's too dark, but yes. So those aren't wrong, but I'm like, if we're promoting that we are doing a customized 1-year plan for you, but then they're all the same, I feel like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. So that's where in our plan, they all get Botox or Dysport. And so then we have like on the plan, they get that and filler or a laser. And so there's this and or thing, and we plug in the things, and then we can decide what kind of laser do they need. Is there Fitzpatrick too dark for an IPL? Then we need to do a Moxie, or some maybe a microneedling, maybe exosomes. So it can truly be customizable, but they have to get the and ors on the checklist to qualify for the plan. But then they're very customizable, and then they'll get a certain percentage off on the good, better, best, plus some
So
free.
investors, so those of you that are like, this is amazing, well, I'm sure Jenny will have a training opportunity for you as well to learn and be certified on this down the road.
That's what we want to, and that's what I want to do, because my vision with this is, not only is it going to be better, more complete care for our patients, hopefully it will keep them from roving around elsewhere, because people aren't doing the things the way we are doing them, and we are truly customizing it for them. Plus, as you say, and your things, they talk about people are not going to leave you based on price, they're going to leave you based on results, right? And we found when we did our most valuable patients, that again, KLC helped us identify those. We found that those were people that were buying retail products, getting injectables, getting laser, and getting skincare. Those were our MVPs. So this whole thing is to create more MVPs, because those people are what's driving our business. They're happier with the results. They're more vested in their outcomes. Their before and afters are better, all of those things. And so the other thing that we're going to do as we launch this is we're going to really be looking at our metrics, our conversion rate versus our consultation rate. We're going to start like really looking at numbers, because my game plan, I'd like to, if we do this successfully, if it works, right, if it's good, then we can actually train people in this methodology. I'm going to trademark it, so we'll own it, and then people can then use it with our permission after they've been trained. And I've been to other classes where you're trained in people's methodologies and all, and that's great. But I feel like what they don't teach you is the business side of it. How to train the rest of your staff, your team. How do you implement it from the practice manager? How do you track it? All of the back end. Like, I can learn all of this fancy words, and I can educate people about aging, and I can come up with a treatment plan. But if we can't implement it and have a nurture campaign on the back end, or an education campaign, or get my support staff to follow through on it, then I'm SOL. Like, what good does it do me just in the treatment room?
Well, that's the thing. And again, it goes back to, because I know people are like, I can't believe she's sharing all that. I'm just like predicting what people's thoughts are. She's sharing all this on this podcast. And, here's the deal, you guys, like, it goes back to what we talked about becoming competitionless requires you living in an abundance mindset. And what you're doing, Jenny, is in this whole era of private equity, and everybody else is worried about, oh, he stole this and she what da 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 da. And here you are just building your business, increasing your business valuation, increasing the strength of your team and your business and your relationships and personalization with your ability to customize with each client while strengthening the model of your business. So it's not some froofy thing like put together a proprietary method. This is a ninja tactic to, as you will, as you, Jenny, are implementing this through, like, this is a multifaceted thing that this has been years in the making, but like, this is not just, I'm going to call myself something again,
Right.
This is the conception to implementation to integration to pulling everything and everybody through this. And this is what will synthesize ultimately what the business will be known for as it expands. So it's just freaking awesome,
Yeah.
and of course, Jenny, if you know Jenny, she's got swag already, like all the, the logo and all the stuff. It's so
Yeah.
fun to watch.
We had t-shirts made for the staff. So when we present it, we'll give them a t-shirt
Yeah.
that's got the logo on it. We have
Yeah.
a flyer made, all the things.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole thing, is if we do wind up somehow making this where we can train people in it, we can have a track for practice managers. So then the practice managers can be trained in the logistics and the back end of it, because then you have the tools to do it in the treatment room, as well as the tools to implement it and make it be successful on the administrative side of the business as well.
Love it. Kudos. Very cool.
Thank you.
So So all of this, like I look at the story of thinking back to Jenny on the Titanic, and then
I was
yeah,
one of the rats scurrying around on the ship trying to save my life.
all this, but like, the cockroach analogy of like, and all these adversities, these identity shifts, which I think is so cool. I love how this is sort of this podcast and conversation with you has really shaped out in the sense of working through like opportunities at different stages of business. Now as you think about where you are today, and you can clearly look back at those milestones and see how the adversities that have produced the growth and this tenacious fire inside of you to continue, which you've always had, but you've got to leverage that to be at this great place where you can be on a podcast talking about this multi-million-dollar business you've built. From the lens of today, how do you feel that your story has now shaped your future?
Wow. That's really an interesting question. I've never been one like that's really big about like 5-year goals and all of that. I just haven't. It's one of those things where I feel like there's so much I can't control. And sometimes I think, are my goals actually going to limit me from what we could actually do? Like, am I going to put the glass ceiling on myself?
Too low.
And
Ah,
so I just am like, I don't like to do that. And plus, then you have years like I had last year, which is a complete like everything blew up. Um, but I do feel like, of course, I'm more, not that I look forward to it, but I know that if and when challenges come, I'm more adept at handling them or navigating them with wisdom, hopefully with a little bit of grace, to be able to survive them and learn from them and kind of take the good from the bad or make lemonade from lemons, the whole thing. Um, and I feel like if I hadn't been through all of the things and the adversities that I'd gone through, I don't think I would be where I am. And I don't feel like I would be successful, however you define success. There's lots of different ways to define that. And I feel like my definition of that has changed some through the years as well. And I think you've also been helpful at kind of getting my brain thinking along those lines as well. So thank you for that for sure. Um, but from that standpoint, it just, you have the strength to be able to step into the unknown because we have a lot of unknowns. The economy is unknown. There's more competition coming. I do feel like this industry is going to be getting better and better. We're going to have more products and better products and more options to treat patients and give them the best outcomes possible. So that is exciting to be a part of that kind of an industry that's not stagnant, that's constantly growing. And I feel like sometimes you almost have to be really judicious about what you do add on and don't adopt everything that's brand new right out of the gate. And just be able to take some time to really evaluate if it fits into your practice ecosystem, if it's something you want to add. Just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean I should be doing it. And anyway, so all of those things I think are going to lead to where we're headed in the future. And ultimately, it's all about steps, just one decision at a time, one day at a time, and trying to not get too far ahead of yourself, because then I think that lends to frustration.
yeah. Do you feel like you would have some sort of different perspective if you could go back? Like if you were to have a conversation with your younger self, like the Jenny just starting her entrepreneurial journey, what would you tell her?
Of course, I would let her know that she can do it, right? Because I think that's the thing that I really just was so slow to do everything because I just didn't even see myself as being able to do that. And like, why? Like, why not? So from that standpoint, I would just, give her a kick in the pants and be like, come on now, like you can do this. But then I feel like it's always like, time travel. Remember the movie Back to the Future? And of course, where Marty was going back and Doc was like, no, 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 don't tell me, don't tell me. You're going to mess up the whatever, and it's like the trickle down, like you change one thing, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that for me, even though I feel like things have been slow, but I was intentionally slow, honestly. So I have only myself to really be responsible for that. But I don't think I would change anything because all of it has led me to where I am, and I'm happy where we're at. I'm content, right? To as content as I can be, right? Because that's the problem with us type A entrepreneurs. It's like, what now? What next? Da, da, da,
Yeah.
and so you have to temper that. But I am overall content as I can be as a person. And I have to kind of give some definitions there. But because I think if I would have known, I would have messed it up or tried to push it or force it to happen, or gotten in my head about it or tried to control something that I really couldn't control instead of just letting things kind of unfold organically as they have. So I don't
Mhm.
think I would change anything, but I would probably get a little bit more confidence earlier on and maybe started some of the coaching stuff earlier. I think that maybe would have been the difference. It's like, okay, I got this.
Mhm.
I can do this. I'm going to do it. And then really start pouring into myself earlier than I had. But other than that, I wouldn't want to change a bunch of it because I just mess it up.
Well, it's true. I think like I think the same thing to myself. I feel like that's such a hard question to answer, and it depends on the day. Um,
Exactly.
but for sure, like I agree, taking those risks. Like I'm most proud of myself for pushing the times I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and did things
Yeah.
that scared me when those were the hardest to get myself to do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So um awesome. Well, I think a great way to wrap up would be, Jenny, just coming from such a place of wisdom, right? What advice would you have to share with younger injectors who are coming into our industry today?
Yeah, that is, oh my goodness, because the entry into this industry is pretty easy, to be honest with you. And that's good and bad, and I have to take the good with the bad because it's how I got into the industry. So I can't be too like, about it. But I do feel like just operating with integrity. I think that is the in this, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why in the medical aesthetics industry there's so many things going on that are. I hear these things that happen in other med spas. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? And those people make me have to work twice as hard, but I don't care. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to work twice as hard. I'm happy to have to do that to demonstrate that we do things differently, that we do care, that we're not just trying to sell crap to people, that we really do have. We can really help them. We can really bless them, and we're not high pressure sales and doing gimmicks and things along that line. So from that standpoint, I just tell them number one, just have integrity. Do things for the right reason, even if it hurts you. And that's been something that I've really tried to stick with. If I promise something to a patient and it's, I told them, oh yeah, we can absolutely do it this way, and then we can't. And I really like gave them a hard number or something. I stick with it, even if I take a loss, because I feel like at the end of the day, all I have is my word, and I really want to keep my word as best I can. Then the other thing I would tell them is just to know their limits, and it's okay to have them. Like, you don't have to be doing everything all at once when you first start. Like,
Mhm.
really master a couple things. And when we train people at Glow, when I hire on a new nurse practitioner to train them, I am slow. Like, they don't lay their hands on a patient for a month or two. A month or two. I'm paying them. And I mean, I take a loss on that. I take a hit, but I'm willing to do it because in the end, I want the finished product to be excellence, and I want people to be confident in the person that's injecting them. And so I teach them Botox, and we teach Botox very slow. Like, it's all anatomy first, depth, then we start dosing, then we talk placement, then we talk consult, then they can actually inject somebody. I mean, it's a long process. And so I told get good at Botox and maybe lips and cheeks. Just start with the baby steps. Master those things, get some wins, then add more complicated things as you go. Don't try to do everything all at once.
Yeah. That's something that's come up in my mind through as a theme through a lot of what we've talked about today is just to play the long game.
Yeah.
know, because it ultimately, that's all it is, you know, and it's how you're going to have the ups and downs and then navigating through those. I think when you come from the perspective that I'm still gonna have to, I'm gonna have to deal with the decisions I make today and 10 years down the road. So like, why think about just how it's going to impact me now? Think about the bigger picture and what I'm building and what I want to be known for, you know,
Yeah,
which I think is it's hard to do when you're in this sprint and this race and you feel the competition and all of those things. But
absolutely.
ultimately, I think that's just such incredible advice, you know, and just doing the right things for the right reasons with integrity. Um, and um, and for the bigger picture, you know,
Yeah.
ultimately. So
And I just tell them it's okay to be a novice. And that's because a lot of times you come from being an expert in one field and you come to a new field and then you're a novice again. It's very uncomfortable, especially for adults.
yes.
And I tell them just to lean into that. And it's okay. Like, don't run from it or hide it, but embrace it, because that's the only way that you move from being a novice back to being an expert. Because otherwise, if you hide things and you don't really fully learn things, then from that standpoint, you'll always kind of be a novice, right? You're going to be trapped kind of in this circuitous situation. And so just to embrace the discomfort and to lean into it and not be embarrassed about it. And from that standpoint, it will be very freeing, because otherwise it can be really intimidating and uncomfortable. But that's where if you just acknowledge it, lean into it, accept it, and just know that it's temporary, then you can get more out of that season than if you ignore those things.
Hmm. Love it. Well, Jenny, this has been such an amazing interview. I want to thank you for sharing, being so open and sharing so much of your experiences. Like I said, you know, we've talked about before, I think there's an enough conversation about the hard times
Yeah.
and the times when things aren't like looking, you aren't the flashiest looking thing on
Yep.
social media, but you're just, you know, putting one foot in front of the other, and
Yep.
everybody's going to go through that. And so I think, you know, when you talk about timing, I have a feeling this podcast is going to touch a lot of people,
Yeah.
you know, in midst of time when there's uncertainty, and your advice to just confidently step into the unknown, I resonates very deeply for me too. So I appreciate that.
Well,
So
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's such an honor. I absolutely love your podcast. It's one of my absolute favorites. And so from that standpoint, it's really an honor to be a voice on it as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
my pleasure. I know. I remember you messaging me back like way back about the podcast, like, you know, questions. So you've actually stimulated a lot of thought for me and provoking many of the topics we talk about. So, okay, Jenny, well, we will be, obviously, you know, I'll be seeing you on the flip side and we'll be in touch with our audience, and I'll be sure to link up, your social. If anybody wants to kind of touch, obviously follow Jenny. She also gives business tips on her social media, and there'll be more to come out about her glow tectonic, proprietary methodology and how you can get involved in that. So thanks so much, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye bye.